June is Myasthenia Gravis Awareness Month. During the month of June, the MG community comes together to raise awareness about the condition, as well as to promote research and fundraising to support individuals with MG. Myasthenia gravis, commonly referred to as MG, is a neuromuscular disorder that weakens the skeletal muscles responsible for movement by impairing the connection between the nerves and the muscles. Wow, that's a tough one. It's so easy for us just for our mind to connect and move, but with MG, it's not. Although this condition is rare, MG still affects around 36,000 to 60,000 Americans. And that number may be off, and I can be corrected when we bring on our representatives. However, this number could be potentially higher due to the fact that MG is underdiagnosed, and it's probably one of the most underdiagnosed diseases that there is. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And this evening, let me introduce my guests. We have the wonderful Rosemarie D'Alessandro, the president and CEO of Jones Joy Foundation. And Rosemarie suffers from MG. We also have Michael Antonellis, and Michael is the vice president of the MG Foundation. Michael's going to speak with us, and Tom Barrett. Tom was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis, and Tom is happy to talk about his experience with the disease, and his professional experience is in the pharmaceutical industry. How interesting is that? We could find out if there's any pharmaceuticals that may help. So in the meantime, I'd like to welcome Rosemarie, Michael, and Tom. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Hello, Rosemarie, Michael, and Tom.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Hi.
I'm so glad that we got together, Michael.
Yes.
And then we have another guy on the team.
Yes, and we need to learn, because maybe there are some of our listeners out there that are suffering from MG and do not really realize they have it. And we'll talk about the symptoms. So let's start first. Shall we start with Michael? And Rosemarie does have MG. Let's start with Michael. Michael, what is myasthenia gravis, please? Can you explain that to us?
Hi, Lori. It's so great to be on the show again. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Anything.
We love everyone, all your listeners. So,
Thank you.
I did want to say that, and just start off by saying that myasthenia gravis is a rare neuromuscular disease. Rosemarie and Tom can talk about the symptoms certainly in more detail.
Yes.
Because I do not have MG.
Thank God. Thank God.
It does impact, as you mentioned, up to maybe 60,000, 70,000 people around the United States. Mm-hmm. But we believe those numbers are higher because it does take a long time, in some cases many years, for patients to be diagnosed, which is, really an awful thing. So we at the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America, we're trying to promote more awareness, more understanding of the challenges that patients face and the symptoms that they face, so that the disease could be diagnosed earlier and folks get on treatment earlier as well.
Absolutely. We're getting a little distortion there, Michael. Are you in a car or?
No, I'm actually not at all. And,
aren't we getting it's funny. We'll Latasha will fix it. She'll talk to you about maybe what we can do to clear that up a little bit. Nothing. Okay. Okay. We'll get to that. So it is a terrible disease, and let's talk a little bit. And Tom, welcome to the show. And my heart goes out to you. I'm so sorry that you are plagued with this disease. It's a horrible thing. When did you get this disease? Which I'm going to ask Rosemarie. When did you discover that you had that? And what were your symptoms that you saw that you said? It must, and you're a pharmacist, so as far as I'm concerned, pharmacists are almost doctors, and I guess that you probably recognize it maybe a little bit earlier than a novice who is not trained in the medical field as you are.
Well, in fact, I am not a pharmacist, but I work in the life sciences.
Oh, okay.
I work in the world of research, computing.
Okay.
And research in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I was diagnosed in 2019. And it was only because I used to be very athletic, and I was playing in a tennis tournament, and things just weren't quite working right.
Yes.
And I found that one of my eyes was pointing in the wrong direction.
Oh, my. There's a picture
So,
here.
and I happened-
Yes, I'm looking at this.
Yeah,
Yes.
I happened to be in New York at the time and called my doctor, and they said, you need to come in right away. And I said, well, I'm in New York. I got business, and I won't be back to Boston until Thursday, and this was on a Monday.
Mm-hmm.
They said, well, you need to come in right away. And that's when I went in, and I knew immediately something really not good was happening when they asked the head of the practice to come in and see me.
Oh, good.
And I'm like, okay, this isn't good. And when I finished with all the testing as the result, and my PCP called me at 10 o'clock at night and said, as a result of one of the tests, you have myasthenia gravis.
Oh, my. Wow.
And I had never heard of it.
Yes.
When I reflect back, I was diagnosed in 2019, but I look back and I see, I had some injuries. I don't think I should have had some injuries. So I think I was experiencing it for at least 10 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was, okay, here you are. And I happen to be diagnosed with a severe version of generalized myasthenia gravis.
Mm-hmm.
And you will hear there are multiple versions of myasthenia gravis, but I was diagnosed with severe, and I did not know what that meant.
Right, and you
So
don't.
it's a life changer. I'll pause there, but it is definitely a life changer.
Oh my, and yes, and Rosemary's going to tune in a minute, but just let me just read off some of the symptoms: fatigue, weakness of the eye muscles, drooping of one or both eyelids, blurred or double vision, a change in facial expression, difficulty swallowing, shortness of breath, impaired speech, weakness in the arms, hands, fingers, legs, and necks. Now it's funny because this could almost emulate Bell's palsy when people come down with a Bell's palsy. So it must be different tests that they do to differentiate both of those.
Yes, and I'm not sure what Rosemary, how she was diagnosed, but the
Rosemary.
blood test that I was ran on me is something that's checking for the acetylcholine, which is the chemical that fires off to your muscles.
Oh,
and if everything is being received right, I won't go into the detail, but there is a blood test. It's one of the tests. And that's what came back, and it took about a week or so for that to be run, and I came back, and the numbers weren't good, and that's when I got the call. And what you described for all the symptoms, I have them all at one time or another.
Oh boy!
And that's what you'll find. You'll find interesting is that it's not all the time. And so sometimes I might have weakness in my legs. Sometimes I'll have double vision. And sometimes I'll have problems swallowing. But it's not all the time. There's variability to it.
Yes.
And I use the word insidious.
Yes.
We look good. But we're
inside,
not.
right?
So it's the
right.
inside.
Absolutely.
I love that word.
Absolutely. And Rosemary, thank you, Tom.
I'd like to meet you someday.
Rosemary, tell us. I want to get this in. Rosemary, tell us what your symptoms.
It took about 8 years to diagnose.
8 years.
Yeah.
Wow. So how?
I was like I was late teens, and my 20s. And it started with when I was running, and my leg just gave way.
Oh boy!
But then it never happened again. Never thought about it. So that was it. I thought, I was rushing to get to the bus. So it was during those 8 years they thought I had narcolepsy. They thought I had depression. They thought I had, all these sinus infections. And meanwhile, I knew that they were wrong because I knew my body.
Right.
So what it did positive was the diagnosis taking so long, it made me stronger and more of a fighter because I was always a little bit of a fighter. So that was a good thing. So then a year after my little girl who delivered cookies to a neighbor was raped and murdered, they diagnosed it. So the point is because of the experiences I had of waiting to be diagnosed and always, keep on trying, that helped me. That was one of the ways that helped me to be strong to work with John.
Absolutely.
So what I was finding that in all this stuff that was going on, that I was also seeing that there's positive with the very, very, like suffering and all the pain and all the confusion that you could have with MG.
Yeah,
and even like with John too.
Yes,
it helped me.
Yes.
So they found out through the electric tests, and that was at Mount Sinai.
Okay.
And then it was a tensilon test, but the electric test of my muscles.
And that's how they diagnosed.
And then it was interesting. I remember going to Philadelphia, to Johns Hopkins, to Dr. Drachman, one of the biggest people in the United States at that time for MG. Mm-hmm. And when he first saw me, he says, "Oh, you don't have MG. Why are you coming here?" I'm there for 45 minutes. "Oh," he says, "yeah, you have MG."
Wow.
Because my muscles in my face are getting tired. My voice was getting tired. My eyes, like you were saying, you get the vision, blurry vision. And I haven't driven now for about 25 years. And in a lot of time, I'm homebound. But I don't make that stop me from living.
And you know what it is. It's the sadness of people that are not diagnosed or misdiagnosed that have to go through this and do not know what they're living with. That's very, and you are a fighter, Rosemarie, and we love you for being that.
I really hope that what we do today can help at least 10 people go to the doctor and find out what they have.
Exactly.
And they might have this.
And it might be, even if there's a few of these signals, a few of these symptoms, just be tested. And I'd like to talk about, we're going to a break in about 1 minute, and I don't want to start this, but I want to find about what how it's diagnosed, medication. I want to find out it's the thymus gland removal can develop decreased muscle weakness. There's a lot involved here. And then I want to find out, maybe from Michael also. Michael, I'd like to ask you, what is a myasthenia crisis? I mean, I've heard of that, and we also want to talk about what causes it, what people are prone to it, and what is the prognosis for this? And if anybody has any questions out there, please, if you feel you have any of these symptoms, please call. We have the experts with us this evening. Give us a call at 609-927-1100. And as I said before, it emulates a lot of other diseases. Guillain-Barré syndrome, I would imagine. As I said, Bell's palsy, because the drooping of the face and the eye. So please, if you have any questions, or there's maybe a loved one that may have these symptoms, call us and talk to us, and Rosemarie, Tom, and Michael can guide you in the right direction. So would you please stay with us? We're going to go to our break. I don't want to start a question and have to cut off on it, because I have some wonderful questions that will help our listeners. So Michael, Tom, Rosemarie, please stay with us. We will be back after these very important messages.
3 WOND.
Welcome back to the show. And this evening we are honored to have I would say, Michael Antonellis, who is the Vice President of the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation, Rosemarie D'Alessandro, the CEO and President of Jones Joy Foundation, and Tom Bartlett. And Tom is a victim of this insidious, as he said, disease. And June is MG Awareness Month. So please, if there's anybody in your family that might be suffering from any of the symptoms, do not hesitate. Get them to a doctor. And I'd like to pose this question to Michael. Michael, can you tell us, is MG, and I'm going to shorten it up, so is MG, myasthenia gravis, a genetic disease, and how do you get it? I mean, is it something, it's the immune system? Can you explain that to myself and the listeners?
Lori, there's no evidence that it is a genetic disease. There's been a lot of research. In fact, we fund many different types of research studies, clinical trials. So we're really coming up with some groundbreaking discoveries about what
Great.
MG really is and how it's produced. It's not like, a disease where, you would catch it like a virus or something like that. It can impact anyone at any time, no matter what age or heritage. And
Really?
it impacts people in very different ways. They actually call it, a lot of folks call it the snowflake disease,
Really?
because the symptoms impact patients in many different ways, in unique ways. So because of that, patients who are suffering with myasthenia gravis, they have the disease, they're experiencing the symptoms. If they're on treatments, they tend to feel better depending on what the treatment is. The treatments are really customized. But in some cases, patients will experience flare-ups or exacerbations.
Or crisis.
And that could be,
crisis is one of the questions I was going to ask, and I wanted to pose that to you. What is a myasthenia crisis when they speak of that?
So there's different degrees. An MG flare-up or exacerbation is when there is worsened symptoms like double vision, slurred speech, increased arm weakness, falling or unsteady walking. But then the MG crisis is truly an emergency situation. Many times, MG patients, when they're in crisis, they cannot breathe. They're having very serious symptoms that are so debilitating that they can't function anymore. And in the case of an MG crisis, we ask family members, caregivers to call 911 as soon as possible, because you could have minutes before it worsens even more. So an MG flare-up, it does tend to happen, but an MG crisis is truly an emergency situation, whereas the symptoms get so bad that a person is really in an emergency situation.
That's horrific, and you don't even feel it coming on. You do not know. And while we're on that, Michael, let me ask you. Then I'm going to pose a question to Tom and Rosemarie. How is MG diagnosed and treated? So I'm sure there's different means of diagnosing. As Rosemarie said, she went to the doctor. He said, "No, you don't have MG," and then all of a sudden he said, "Yes, you do," as she sat there. So are there medications? Right here, I read that the thymus gland removal. Can you tell us a little bit of how it is, the tests that need to be done and the treatment that make people more comfortable and able to live a normal life or somewhat of a normal life?
Yeah, absolutely, Lori. So as we kind of talked about earlier in this conversation, there are electricity tests, blood tests that are taken. The blood tests are very effective so that they can see the level of the antibodies that are in the blood that are impacting the brain waves going down the nerve endings and into the muscle. And there's a junction between the nerve endings and the muscle, and those antibodies are there, and they're disrupting the connection, the signal. And so that is one of the primary outcomes of folks with MG. So you can test for that in blood. You can test for that through the electricity tests. There are some folks who are seronegative. That is a form of MG where the antibody test actually doesn't work, and so there are additional tests that need to be done. So those folks actually are the rarest of the rare, and so they're in a very hard situation where, again, diagnosis comes after many years sometimes. Now,
Michael, that's what I had. It didn't show in the antibodies.
That's right, and that's the problem, because then a doctor would say, well, if we can test for the antibodies, we can tell, but if it's not showing in the test, then additional tests have to be done to diagnose seronegative. The great thing is there are a number of treatments. So you mentioned thymectomy, Lori. Thymectomy is very effective. And we know a lot of patients who get their thymus taken out because the thymus, as they become adults, it shrinks, and the value of the thymus decreases. And so if you can take that out, it's actually a better way of controlling those bad antibodies that are in the blood. But also, over the past 3 years, and I joined the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation of America 3 years ago, and within these 3 years, there have actually been 4 brand new treatments that have come out, injectable, sub-Q, treatments that have been developed by organizations like Argenx and Alexion. But they came to us, years ago through clinical trials and studies to get our expertise, but also we funded a lot of new clinical trial work and research studies that are discovering new things about MG that can be turned into new treatments and hopefully at some point a cure.
Hopefully a cure. Right now there's no cure for MG, correct?
There is no cure, Lori, but there are a number of treatments, and there's some older treatments that have been working. There are newer treatments, as I just mentioned.
Right.
And we're finding that when patients are taking advantage of those treatments, that many times they are living a better quality of life. They're not experiencing the symptoms in the same way. And we've even seen in some cases, the MG really is regressing to a point where people feel very normal and very natural. And that's very exciting for the entire community.
That really is. And just let me put this in. So if people would like to donate or do something to get involved, how would they get in contact with the MG Foundation, Michael?
They can do that in several different ways. But I would say the best way is to go to our website. Our website is myasthenia.org. That's spelled myasthenia.org. And at myasthenia.org, you can donate to the organization. You can also participate in fundraising organizations and campaigns and initiatives. You can have community events in your area or in your neighborhood. I'll tell you, a lot of people during MG Awareness Month, they've been creating their own events, and they would bring their neighborhood together, their work friends, their family, and then they would take any donations that come in and filter those donations to the MGFA. So we're just finding that a lot of people have taken action during MG Awareness Month. The term that we use is turning awareness into action, and we believe that when people take action to try to spread the word about the challenges of MG, we'll get more and more people to understand what the disease is and how to diagnose it.
So important. And thank you, Michael. I'd like to ask Tom and Rosemarie. I'm going to run this by Tom first. And Tom, as a patient, what has been your biggest challenge? And when were you diagnosed with MG? Please, once again, recently or a couple of years? Yes. What is your biggest challenge? Would you say, Tom? Suffering from MG.
So I was diagnosed in 2019, and I'm just going to make a comment on diagnosing.
Yes,
it's
please.
It's really hard to diagnose with somebody with MG, even though there are tests out there.
Yes.
The familiarity with the disease, not only is it rare that there's not a lot of folks that have it, but when you go in to see your primary care, it's not a top tier. This is a very rare disease, so they're not testing it right away, even though you may exhibit symptoms. So it's very hard to diagnose, and Rosemarie explained it took her a number of years.
Yes.
I was lucky. I was an anomaly. My PCP knew.
Good, good.
And
thank God.
So absolutely. And that's one of the things that don't let somebody tell you, if you believe you have it, don't let somebody tell you you don't. Keep pursuing it.
Good.
I'm lucky, but I am in the minority of folks who are being diagnosed.
And
so
maybe the medical field is finding more out about that now. Maybe they know more about it. As Rosemarie said, when she was way back, it wasn't something that they knew.
No, but you know what? It's still hard to diagnose. But what's really happening that's really very good, I've seen it in the past few years. The Myasthenia Gravis Foundation has really stepped up to a point where they are doing even more marvelous things.
Wonderful. So important.
And that's what I see that is really making a difference.
And that's what Michael was saying. They're finding different medications and so
but
on.
It's just, I just see it. I just see it from
Good.
before and now.
Good.
So that's why
That's
I
important.
think they are more like they're educating the doctors.
Yes, and they
so the
should.
doctors know more.
Yep.
And we have to educate doctors more.
Absolutely.
So what I want to say is this. In the book that I wrote, and it's coming out soon, what I do in 3 parts of it, I speak about, because I'm working with the MG, right? I speak about it, and I bring out about the foundation, the Myasthenia Gravis Foundation. But I talk about things that could really, because I could talk about more details. Here we only have so much time. That could really hit a person. They'll say, oh, that's what I had. Oh, I'm not afraid to go if she could do it.
Right.
But it's, I don't want to, I'm saying about the book now because it has 3 parts of it.
Right.
And one is really a chapter of my life with MG. Because I'm telling you, my daughter, my little daughter, I told you she was, murdered, delivering cookies. But the myasthenia is with you every single day.
Right. Well, that heartache is also,
and
yes.
it could get intense.
Yes.
And sometimes not intense.
And I want to find out.
With the other, that got, different. Like it goes into a different stage.
Yes, it does.
So myasthenia is hard to live with.
I can, and I want to.
But there's still so much you could do with it.
Just so much. And that's why I want to run the next question by Tom and you also, Rosemarie. What is the biggest challenge, Tom? And then I'm going to have Rosemarie jump in. What is your biggest challenge since you've had MG?
Actually, I would say it's working because of the way MG affects me and affects everybody a little differently. I work from home. I'm fortunate I travel a little bit, but I experience extreme fatigue, and it's very hard to describe that through the radio, but you just feel weak. And I experience that every single day. I have to go lay down for 30 minutes. I don't go to sleep, but I am
fatigued,
extremely tired.
Yes.
And that is one of the fatigue is one of the mysteries of myasthenia gravis. There's a lot of things they can tell us, but they can't, and they being the research community,
right?
They can't tell us why we experience the fatigue. And the way the receptors on the muscles, we have some good sense of how that all works. We have our immune system killing those receptors.
Yeah, it's an autoimmune disease, which I did not know. So it attacks the body for these. Yes, it attacks the body. Right.
We use the word kill. It kills these receptors.
Right.
And so they're no longer there to receive the chemical.
Right.
And the chemical just goes into your body, and that's why we feel weak. And that can affect your eye, your voice, your ability to swallow, and all the other symptoms that you identified.
Yes.
The other challenge is, and it was mentioned, was confusion or lack of clarity.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of the things that I am most frustrated by, because that's another thing that they being the research community, they say, well, that's not really myasthenia gravis, but they can't explain why I get that. And I work in the world of science.
I was just going to say that, right.
And Tom, you know how I explain the confusion? It's almost like you go through a stage of the day where you feel foggy. Because I know I'll write a card to someone, and I'm writing it fine, but if I look at it, I don't know what I write, what I wrote. But I'm going through that,
And that's
right?
that's a big challenge. That is a big challenge. And one of our hosts here on News Talk 1492.3, may he rest in peace, Jerry Blavitt. He was known as the Geeter with the Heater, very, very, very popular in Philadelphia. He just passed away not too long ago at the age of 82 with myasthenia gravis.
Right.
He was a famous disc jockey. Yeah, I don't know if you know of him, but
I want to say one thing. What I find, and I think this is what you're talking about, Tom, with the resting, that, resting is a good medicine. it's really the greatest medicine, because I know after I rest, right, then I'll pick up, and then I could walk. I could walk more normally. I don't have that fuzziness, and so forth. And sometimes, Tom, I have to go to sleep. I go to sleep.
Well, that's okay if your body needs it. When your muscles are fatigued, sometimes it's difficult. And I can't imagine. And I'd like to ask Michael this, and of course Tom jump in and Rosemarie jump in. Michael, what do patients with MG wish others knew about the disease, other than what Rosemary is telling us? Well, I mean, which are horrible things to experience, and what
but honey,
Tom has told us.
But still, you can work with it, because you don't let the mental take it over.
Right.
You stay positive.
Well,
and
yes,
you stay
you do.
strong
Yes.
with the mental.
Yes.
You see? That,
yes.
They can't, myasthenia can't take that away from you.
No, exactly.
No.
Michael, and we'll let Michael jump in. So, Michael, what do you, when you've spoken to patients with MG, what do you wish that others knew, that they felt others knew about the disease? Michael's not there? Okay, we got to call Michael back. Well, let me ask Tom and Rosemary. Tom, what do you think? And Rosemary, jump in, please. What do you think, as a patient with MG, what do you wish others knew about the disease?
Okay, and I think there's probably 30 different answers to this, but the one...
We've got 4 minutes, Tom.
Yes. I know. But it's the idea that the therapies that we're on, many of them are infusion-based, much like chemotherapy.
Yes.
So I'm on an infusion therapy that I have to receive once a week for 4 weeks. Then I get 4 weeks off. Then I go back to receiving once a week for 4 weeks. And right now, the prognosis is I will do that for the rest of my life. And so I have to have an IV put in the back of my hand and sit there for a few hours,
right,
and receive this. It is a chemical. It's like chemotherapy. We're not cancer patients,
right?
But we are taking our treatments in a very similar way. And for me, I used to go to Mass General Cancer and Infusion Center, and I would sit next to patients who had cancer while I was receiving my infusion. And most folks, they'll see us, all right, you see us in the store, they'll say hello. They don't know,
right,
what's that bruise on the back of your hand. And I'm taking other therapies, too, that are pills.
Good.
But we take a lot of medication just to keep
Well, I
going
want to tell
every
you
day.
that I was on medicine, and I got off it. I was on Mestinon, and it only helped a little bit. Thank God mine never got to severe, okay? It's
Thank
more
goodness.
the worst I've had, I'm pretty weak, and pretty weak, but still not to the crisis. But what I did was then, Tom, I saw that the medicines were not helping, and I decided to go alternative, holistic, and that's what I did.
Yep.
And that had to do with the way you eat. That had to do with getting, like, energy help. That was through, like, Life Force Energy. I go now. I've been going 22 years.
That's wonderful.
And that's the most help I've had, Tom.
And
so I don't know if you could look into something like that.
Well, I think maybe a combination of the both.
Yeah.
But we're coming to the end. I would love to have all of you back again. Michael, we had a question, but we kind of lost you there for a minute. So, Michael, please, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Rosemary. Blessings to you. And, Michael, thank you for what you do. Once again, Michael, let everyone know where they can contact on your website, please.
Absolutely, Laura. Yes. And again, that's myasthenia.org, myasthenia.org. And our website has so much information, great educational materials, resources, and information where patients and caregivers and anyone interested in learning more about MG, they can go to get the information they need.
Wonderful. Rosemary, Michael, and Tom, thank you so very much for being with us.
Interviews of
thank
MG
you.
Patients.
Okay. Thanks, Latasha. Thank you. And please come back and visit. We love you guys. Thank you for what you're doing.
Meet you all.
Have a great evening.
Tom.
You're very
Meet you.
welcome. And we love
Take
you out
care,
there.
folks.
Have a great night. Good evening. Have a good night.
From ABC News, I'm Daria Albinger.